Clutch Truckers filmed before a live studio audience. Yep, that's Rusty, the world-famous meatball dog. Hey YouTube, thanks for tuning in to another edition of the Clutch Trucker channel. Clutch Trucker here. Okay, I missed it. I'm sorry, but you know, throughout the whole COVID-19 thing and all that, FMCSA did publish, is the word I'm looking for, their final rule on the new HOS rules, the new hours service rules, back in May. And they're going to go into effect this September the 28th, okay? So I thought I'd break it all down to you. I read everything. I read the full document, not just the highlights, the whole thing. Took a while, but I'm going to go through the whole thing for you because it's that important. Okay, first thing you need to know is the 30-minute break rule. We're still going to have to deal with that. Good news is they're sticking to what they proposed last year, which is the 30-minute break needs to be taken after 8 hours of driving, not just from when you start your day, when you started your clock, which is the way it is now. As soon as you start your 14-hour clock on your day, you got to take a 30-minute break off duty only within 8 hours of the beginning of that 14-hour clock. That's where it has really sucked, because what if you start your clock, do your pre-trip, and you're on e-logs, and now you find a problem. You got to take care of something, takes you another half hour, 45 minutes, whatever, and now you've lost an hour. Now you can only drive 7 hours at most before you have to take that 30-minute break, and it has to be all off duty. They're changing that. It's after you've started driving. So say you started your pre-trip, you got delayed an hour after that, then you started driving. You're still going to drive a full 8 hours now before you have to take that 30-minute break. And here's the good news. That 30-minute break can either be all on duty or all off duty or a combination of the two. So I always argue that if I'm going to pull into a place and fuel up for 15 minutes and then I spend the next 15 minutes going to the bathroom, buying some stuff in the store, yada yada, updating my logs, that should all count as off-duty time because I'm not driving. Well, that's the way it is now. That's the way it's going to be proposed. As long as you spend 30 minutes not driving, doesn't matter if it's all on duty or partly on duty or 15 minutes on duty, 15 minutes off duty, that'll count for your 30-minute break. So that's going to make it a lot easier on us. Now say, like, I know this has happened to me. I pull in after a couple hours driving, and I've already, driven that morning. I had to go to a shipper. I get loaded, and now I got to go scale, right? Well, sometimes if you got to adjust it 2 or 3 times, you can eat up a whole half hour doing a cat scale. Bang, you did your half-hour break. That's the good news. That's going to work better for us. I think that's going to be real helpful. So your 30-minute break can either be all on duty or a combination of on duty and off duty as long as it's 30 minutes of not driving time. And it only starts after 8 hours, once you started driving initially that first time. This one does not affect most of us over-the-road truck drivers, which is the short-haul exemption. They've extended that up to 14 hours in a workday where they only gave you 12 before. You had 11 hours if you were within the 100 air mile radius, but you only got 1 extra hour because you had to be back to the place you started by 12 hours. Well, now they've given you guys up to 14 hours to do that, like the rest of us, and they've extended your air mile radius up to 150 miles. So that's going to work for you better on that. So they're giving you another 50 air mile radius, and they've added you up to the 14-hour day like the rest of us over-the-road drivers. That's a big change for you guys. Adverse weather or adverse driving conditions is what they call it. They've now extended that by an additional 2 hours, okay? We had 2 hours of extra driving time before, or we currently have right now, with the adverse driving conditions, but we could never extend our 14-hour day. So what if you were at 10 hours into your 14, you had 2 hours left to drive, and all of a sudden you ran into a traffic jam, an accident, a blizzard came out of nowhere. Now you were screwed because you couldn't extend your 14-hour day. Now you can do both. Believe me, I went into the full rule and read everything carefully, and I'm letting you know on all this. I went to the whole full rule off the FMCSA website. I read through, 39 pages or something of this crap. I wanted to be fully informed so I could fully inform you. Okay? And it does say, here's what it says initially in its brief description. It says it extends the driving window by 2 hours. So, of course, I'm thinking, well, what does that mean? Does that mean we get to drive 2 hours longer? Or does that extend just the 14 to the 16? Or both? Well, I read the whole damn thing, and now I will read to you what it said. FMCSA notes that drivers or property carrying CMVs are still prohibited from driving more than 11 hours during a week or work shift, parentheses, 13 hours under the adverse driving conditions exception, and driving is prohibited after an individual accumulates 14 hours of on-duty time, parentheses, or 16 hours under the adverse driving exception. So what that means is we get both, okay? You can extend your day to 16 hours, you can extend your driving up to 13 hours. If you run into adverse driving conditions, like all of a sudden some asswagon decided to run into the Jersey wall in front of you there and shut the entire interstate down for 2.5 hours, at least you get 2 more hours to drive and 2 more hours on your day. You get both. It clearly states that if you read the entire article, as I did, because I care, baby. I care for you. Now, the big caveat to that being, it still has to be something unpredicted that you weren't expecting. You can't just say, oh, the traffic in Atlanta is always bad, and so I'm going to use it for that. They're not going to buy that. I live in Wyoming. I've run into snow over Elk Mountain in June, and they've shut the highway down in June because of winter weather conditions. That's when you can use it. Or, like I said earlier, an ass wagon flips over and knocks into another car and shuts the whole interstate down. You can't predict that. Okay, you can use it there. You just can't use it for something that is predicted. Like if they say a giant storm's coming down and we're going to shut the road down tonight at 6 p.m., well, you already know about that, or you should know about that, so you can't use it then. Unexpected stuff, adverse driving conditions, that's what it's for. Okay, now the big changes to the sleeper berth provision are exactly what they proposed last year. They're sticking exactly with that. And what it is you can now only take an 8 or 8 and 2 split. You have to do 8 hours at least in the sleeper berth, which does stop your 14, but the 2 hours you have to take after that does not stop your 14. So what it came down to is there weren't a lot of times where it really made sense to do the split sleeper berth. It made sense just to wait out the extra 2 hours and do a full 10 reset. Now, here's the big change, and this is what they proposed and what they're going to stick with on the final rule. Both the 8-hour sleeper berth will stop your 14-hour clock, and your 2-hour will stop your 14-hour clock. That's the great news. That's going to make it work so much better. And they're giving us the option of doing a 7 and 3 as opposed to just the 8 and 2. So say you start your day at 8 a.m. and you're driving until, say, 6 p.m. 8 a.m., you would have until 10 p.m. on your 14-hour window to drive. Say at 6 p.m., I'm sure you'd stopped a couple times, for short breaks in there, but say at 6 p.m. you took 2 hours off. Okay? Now, that's going to stop your clock. That means now you got until midnight to finish your driving. So if you've only used, say, 7 hours of your driving, you still have 4 hours left. At 8 p.m., you could still drive those last 4 hours until midnight, and you'd be fine. Now, then at midnight, you'd have to take at least 8 hours off, which stops your 14 again, until 8 o'clock in the morning. All right, so you could do the same thing with a 7 or 3 split. The great news is both of those periods stop that 14-hour clock. What always screwed us up before, or currently, is that you had that 2-hour break didn't stop your 14. So a lot of times, like I say, it really wasn't beneficial to you to do that. Now, because you can stop the clock with your 14-hour clock with either the 3 and 7 or the 2 and 8, one thing they did not keep in the final rule is they excluded the up to a 3-hour They had it originally written as anywhere from 30 minutes to 3 hour break to stop your clock each day, as long as you took 10 hours off after that. What they don't really realize, and believe me, I read through all of it. I read through everything. They don't realize they still gave it to us. You got to take at least 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours to stop your 14, but they still gave it to us, and they don't realize they did it. What do you say, Clutch Trucker? How can that be? The way it was originally written in the proposed rulemaking was you could stop your clock for anywhere from 30 minutes to up to 3 hours in any given day, as long as you took a full 10 hours after that. Okay. They don't realize they gave it to us. We can't take 30 minutes, we can't take an hour, we can't take an hour and a half, but as long as you take 2 hours or 3 hours off during your 14 and count it as a split sleeper berth, then, because here's where they don't realize what they did. The original rule that we have to go under now says one of them has to be at least 8 hours, but not more than 10. And the second one has to be at least 2 hours, but not more than 10. They took away that wording in the new rule. All it says is, say you're going to do the 7 and 3, the first one has to be 3 hours, or say one of them has to be 3 hours of off-duty or sleeper berth. But it doesn't say less than. The second one, and then the second one has to be at least 7 hours in the sleeper berth, okay? With both periods equaling 10 hours. But it doesn't say less than like the old rule did. So, let's go back to my example. You start your day at 8 a.m., okay? You only have until 10 p.m. to drive. You get stuck at a shipper, say at 5 p.m., and you go off duty for 3 hours till 8 p.m., okay? Then they finally get done with you, you get out of there. Well, you've stopped your clock, in effect, for 3 hours. You count that as your first sleeper berth, or your first break on that split sleeper berth break of 7 and 3, right? As long as you counted it off duty or in your sleeper berth. Then at 8 p.m. you go back on duty and say you still had 4 hours left to drive. You drive until midnight. Okay, now here's where it gets kind of weird. Okay, then they say you have to take at least 7 hours off. That would mean at 7 a.m. you'd have some hours back. You just would not get back what you did in between, because this is where the rule would be the same, in between the two breaks. So you would not get back those hours between the 7 p.m. and midnight, 8 p.m. and midnight, that you drove on that split sleeper berth, okay? You'd only get back the stuff before that. Well, let's say you're counting then that second break of 7 hours as your second part of the sleeper berth. But let's say you decided, I'm going to make it a full 10. And you didn't start driving again till 10 a.m. the next day. Now you've done 10 hours in the sleeper berth. As the rule is written, and believe me, like I say, I read the whole thing, it just says at least 7 hours, at least 3 hours. They can't get mad at you for resting longer. So essentially what they did is they gave us a 2 to 3 hour break every day if we want to use it, as long as we take a full 10 afterwards. Then we get a full reset. So at 10 a.m., I got a full 11 again. I got a full 14 again. Not a bad deal, right? We can stop that 14-hour clock for either 2 hours or 3 hours or 7 hours or 8 hours, because it just says at least and not less than 10 hours like the old rule. They essentially gave us that opportunity to take a 2 or 3 hour break and stop that 14-hour clock any day we want, as long as we do the 7 or 8 afterwards. And they can't get mad at us if we feel like taking more and making that a full 10. Because that second period of 7 or 8 is still in that 10. That still qualifies. But yet, after 10, we get the full reset. I don't think they realized they gave it to us, but they did. But because I care, and I read the whole freaking document, and I did the math, I'm letting you know, we got it. This is where it counts to sometimes be smart, read all the documents, read all the rules, and find the loopholes. And there's a loophole in there, baby, and we can take advantage of that. So now, if I feel like taking a 2 or 3 hour break, because I'm tired, I didn't sleep well the night before, and I want to take a break and pull over, it's not going to count against my 14. Thank you, FMCSA. You don't realize you gave it to me, but you did. So that's it in a nutshell. That's the new rules going into effect September 28th of this year, after they posted their final rule in May. All right, I missed it because of the whole COVID-19 thing and all that, and just trying to worry about making a living out here, but there you go. So quick rundown again, the 30-minute break, we got more flexibility. It starts only after we start driving. We can take it all on duty or a combination of both. That's great. The split sleeper berth is now 8 and 2 or 7 and 3, which gives us the option of taking a 2 or 3 hour break any day we want, any time we want, and as long as we do at least the 7 or 8 after that, we're good. But we could take a full 10 and get a full 10 reset and be able to stop that 14. They don't realize they gave it to us, but they did. Adverse driving conditions. Before, it gave us 2 more hours of driving. What if you were close to the end of your window? That didn't help you. Now we get both. We get 2 more hours of driving, up to 13 hours in the day, and 2 more hours on our 14, so we get 16 hours in the day if we run into adverse conditions. And of course, the short haul exemption, which doesn't apply to a lot of us, but again, it gives them up from 100 to 150 air miles, and gives them from 12 to 14 hours like the rest of us. It's not too bad. It makes it a lot easier. I'm almost tempted to go back to e-logs. Wait, excuse me, wait a minute. No, I'm sticking with my paper logs. I'm one of the few legally allowed to run paper logs out here, and of course, if you haven't watched my previous videos and you say, how are you doing that, clutch trucker? I got a 99 engine. That rule is still in effect. If you have an engine 1999 or older, you can run paper logs. And believe me, I do. Here's my paper log book. So I think I explained it all thoroughly. I hope I did, and I hope that helps you out. Like I say, unless anything else pops up, these rules are going into effect September 28th of this year. Not that long off. Right now it is Saturday, the 18th of July. So July, August, September, 2.5 months, baby. And these new rules are going to go into effect, and they're going to make our lives a hell of a lot easier out here. Yay! Happy, happy, smiling presents and crap. Yay, 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 yay. Fat guy, happy dance. Hey, 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 hey. Okay, I hope that explained a lot. I hope you understood. If you have any questions or comments, please put the comments down there. I do get to your comments. Takes me sometimes a day or two because I'm working, but I do get to them, all right? So please subscribe. Please like, please comment, please ring that bell for notification. As always, thanks for tuning in, and sniff that magic, YouTube fairy dust. Clutch out.